and our governing committee. We would truly like to thank you all for being here today. It's been a long time coming. We'll just stop for a minute. Spitfire Mark 8 in the markings of Wing Commander Bobby Gibbs, DSO DFC. We have the US Army Air Force P-40, and that aircraft is in the green. We have one that also represents the Royal Air Force operations of P-40s, the one with the red nose. And the P-51 bringing up the rear. That actual aircraft was allocated to the Royal Australian Air Force, but blustery breeze down here, but the higher you get, the more turbulent it becomes, and especially if they fly over that tree line, there's a lot of turbulence being lifted up to higher levels. Right on cue, what we're calling our Tiger Moth formation, but there are two American ring-ins there. Yellow Tiger actually flew. As you can see, these are very, very simple aircraft, and it does show the difference in philosophy of the construction between the United Kingdom and America. The biplane, the Tiger Moth, built by de Havilland Aircraft. Very, very simple construction, and coming from a company that started off in World War I, comes back in. The second aircraft in line is a Ryan STM built in the United States, and in its day that was a rocket ship. You can see the difference, the design thinking, a monoplane aircraft, still fabric covered wings, fixed aircraft, the PT-22. There are about 1,200 of them built, but only about 500 of the STMs. This particular aircraft was part of a group of fly well, especially with some of the slow aerobatic manoeuvres. Precision, you know, the coordination between hand and feet on the rudder pedals is absolutely vital to keep the aircraft balanced at all times. In those days back during the war, they didn't have brakes, and turning was accomplished either by somebody on the wing, on the ground, or by rapid bursts of power and judicious use of the rudder. Luke Kempton flying the Yellow Tiger. Roulettes are the Royal Australian Air Force formation display and aerobatic team. actually formed. Air Force has a proud tradition of formation display teams, and the roulettes followed on from the Red Sails and also the Telstars. And there were a number of other aerobatic teams formed within squadrons for the RAAF. The pilots of these aircraft are drawn from different squadrons, from fighters, from maritime patrol, from transport. Now you can see the two aircraft here, completed half Cuban 8s and approaching the crowd at about 700 kilometres an hour. Passing within metres of each other. That manoeuvre is the roulette, from which they initially gained their team name. Is the basic training aircraft for the Royal Australian Air Force, Royal Australian Navy. Operated, as I said, from East Sail, from the instructors that operate there in Victoria. Now this aircraft, to some of you, may look very similar to the PC-9 that operated earlier on, and we'll see a PC-9 later on today. A different fuselage, but it looks similar. Has a very high profile, high-speed wing. And it's rated for manoeuvres between +8 and -4 Gs. So if you weigh 100 kilos and you fly this at a maximum rate turn, you are the equivalent of 800 kilos. The simulation ratcheted up as a pilot goes through his training and becomes more and more proficient. The tasks become more difficult, more demanding, but that is what training is all about. Has a full glass cockpit. And for those of you who are in love today or would like to be, our roulette's heart. The students displays sensor performance and system modes, basically to create a synthetic air-to-air radar targets, artificial non-safety critical system failures, all of which have to be practiced. It's basically, pilot training is about the aircraft systems, but it is also about knowing what to do in an emergency. Incredible vertical performance there. The aircraft actually has also 4 underwing hard points and 1 centerline fuselage station, and it has the capability of carrying up to about 2,500 pounds of different stores. In this instance, we've got the smoke generators on, but they can be used in a variety of different roles. In fact, training of, we'll call it forward air controllers, is undertaken by a number of these that are operated by the machines. Have incredible spares, operated in any sort of weather as well. Will be operated by the RAAF for many years to come. Again, as I said, the instructors from East Sail come from a variety of backgrounds, not just fighter pilots, transport, maritime patrol. And there is a squadron of these aircraft operated by the Singapore Air Force, number 130 Eagle Squadron. Republic of Singapore Air Force, they fly out of Pierce as well. Rollbacks, very difficult manoeuvre to accomplish. You can see from those two aircraft that were in the jet trainer, that's an interim step up to the F-35 Lightning that we'll see later on today. That sound that you can hear is pretty much the sound of the propellers. It's not the sound of the engines. Now get your cameras ready. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, put your hands together for the RAAF Roulettes and their PC-21 aircraft.
They still did it anyway.
Very familiar shape of the tail there. This aircraft, tandem two-seat primary trainer, and different marks from the Mark 10 right up to the Mark 23. And they served with RAF Reserve Flying Squadrons, the Volunteer Reserve, and also the University Air Squadrons that were very prolific in the UK. Just under 1,290 of these machines built, introduced in 1946. They built 217 of these in Canada, the UK about 1,000, and the de Havilland factory in Portugal produced. last pass there from Brett Alderton, trainers. Two very, very different aircraft here. The CT4s in the lead, converted over to 4C. The FTS was changed to #1 Flying Training School, and that's where the majority of Wingeels operated. T6 and Harvards taxiing out now, the trainer formation coming in. Here comes Dave with Gavin in the back, so give them all a huge wave and you might see yourself in a magazine. All of the Allied troops there, doubling the Viet Cong and also the NVA regulars. If you ever want to read up a little bit about what happened during the Tet Offensive there, and the guy that owned that aeroplane at the time, that's right, pulled out under the bed 2 down was the projectile of a rocket-propelled grenade that had got detonated. It's a very interesting book on his experiences. Now you can hear the, I'll call it Harvard, Texan T6 taking off now, or SNJ for Navy. That sound that you can hear is not the engine, it is actually the propeller tips going transonic. Flew these aircraft up until the 1970s, operating at that time. Next display is by Luke Kempton. The approaching store, the canopy was rattled quite a bit. Over 11,500 of these were built during the war, and the Air Corps ordered 400 of these to start off with. It was successful as a trainer because it was heavier than the recruit aircraft. It had a constant speed propeller. It was fitted with radios, but it didn't have the complexity of the retractable undercarriage, and in earnest they did. Thousands and thousands of pilots trained on this machine. Originally it had a 12-volt system, the B model went to 24 volts, and the BT-15, another variant, was fitted with a different engine due to in the nascent Indonesian Air Force. Coming in from the left, we have the Southern Knights. sometimes they've flown in the T-28 Trojan that we'll see a little bit later on. This is probably one of the most successful advanced training aircraft ever produced. Just over 15,400 manufactured. Produced by North American Aviation. North American is one of the most successful aircraft companies, Air Force inventory. The F-86 Sabre, right the way up through to the XB-70 Valkyrie, the multi-supersonic jet bomber. They only built 2 of them, but what a magnificent aerodynamic achievement that was. This actually started off as part of a competition to supply the Americans with what they call purchased 400 of the aircraft, and they called it the Harvard One. Any of the, if you hear the term Harvard, it refers generally to any aircraft that was of this type that operated. It's pretty much said that this engine, the R1340, is almost bulletproof because it just keeps going and going. Used by the US Army Air Corps, later the US Army Air Force, the US, generally speaking, a single machine gun firing through the propeller arc using an interrupter gear. Others had a 30 caliber machine gun in the rear of the canopy there, in the observer's position. They could also carry light series bombs. RAF used a lot of these again for advanced training and also communications duties. Widely used around the world. The Kiwis finished using theirs in 1977, but the South African Air Force operated those right the way up through to the 90s. The reason being that they couldn't get replacement aircraft because of their apartheid policies at the time. The second aircraft in this lineup is actually one of those rear aircraft owned by, operated under the new permit to fly system in Australia, came from New Zealand, and it was a Harvard. Very, very simple aerobatics, displayed perfectly. Southern Nights have been flying for them. It is believed that the very first use of one of these as a forward air control aircraft, spotting ground troop movements, etc., was an American aircraft with an Australian Army officer in the back, contact with the Mustang fighters, number 77 squadron flying there in Korea as part of the United Nations.